get to introduce our next speaker. On top of great information, content, one of the top marketing, sales professionals I've ever been able to work with or get to know. He's also a good friend of mine too.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a great time that you get to bring some experience to the profession that we all love here today. Joe's been a sales, marketing trainer, corporate executive sales for the last 20 years now. It's incredible to hear that last period of time. I think we've known each other almost 10 plus years, maybe 15 years. And ever since I've known Joe, it's about picking up psychology books, art of selling, every single book that's out in the community he reads and absorbs vigorously, and then creates his own content from it. So he doesn't just make stuff up, it's all from a huge base. He makes
make a lot up.
Here's Joe's passion. Helping you ignite that spark of possibility in yourself and your business is his goal. He makes sure that you focus on activity and results rather than just motivation. Once you get things done, it's most likely that you'll continue to get motivated. Joe loves empowering people to sell more, have fun, and win consistently. He combines a mix of sales expertise, education, and leadership development to enable more professionals to become what he calls sales heroes. They're the ones who are willing to do the hard work to serve those around them. He works with individuals, teams, organizations to create systems, have a deeper understanding of how their customers make decisions, and build their bulletproof mindset for success. He wants to change how the world looks at selling and make it more effortless. He's decided it's his mission to make selling an exciting process for both buyers and sellers alike. Joe gets asked to travel the world, speak in Europe, all over North America, to huge corporate events, keynote addresses. So it's a great honor that we have him here today. Please, warm reception, Joe Girard.
Woo-hoo. Thanks, buddy. That's awesome. Can you guys hear me? Yeah? Cool. I'll try and speak up. I heard some a little quieter earlier today, right? So, yeah, my name is Joe, and thanks for the intro. I always hate getting that intro before you get up because it's like, oh man, it builds all that anticipation, right? But yeah, I'm excited to talk to you guys today. I know I've known Phil for a long time, and I really love this industry. And you know, this is one of those industries that's also changing. Just you know, everywhere is changing. Every industry I talk to, it's the same thing that's happening. You guys all agree things are changing pretty quickly, right? Yeah. The industry that I was in before, doing all the sales coaching and training, was in the education space. I was in for-profit for like 15 years, and man, this stuff changed then. When I first started, you know, people would call you and they would say, do you have information? And we had all the information. They couldn't really get it anywhere else, right? And so they would call us on the phone. Remember the phone, when people would call you on the phone, right? And so we would talk to them about their goals and their needs and say, come see me. And people would actually book appointments and come see you. And it was crazy that we had all the information and they couldn't just go online and Google it now. And then the internet just changed everything, right? And people just go and figure everything out, and they're more informed than ever. But would you guys agree they're more misinformed than ever? Yeah. Right? Especially in your industry. The changes that you guys are seeing, the changes in technology and tools, and having to keep up with this and moving away from, you know, selling products and services, or selling products and moving more to like services and long cycle sales. You guys have seen a lot of those changes, right? So in all these industries, that's what we're seeing, and people are struggling to keep up. Every industry, people are struggling to keep up and deal with this change. So when Phil told me about this topic here about change, I was like, this is exactly what we're doing. And it's good because part of my business is called Change, Grow, Achieve. So we're going to talk about that first part, right? And what I looked at today is when we look at this stuff is there's three things. We're going to talk about where, why, how things have changed. And as I started to put this together, I thought, okay, well, what changes can we make to handle that change? And I thought, man, we're saying a lot of change. So this is what we're saying. How changing you're changing makes changing worth changing, right? Does that sound good? Okay, so we're going to talk about how change works, how we're going to adapt with change, stuff you guys can do right away so that you can just be normal. Okay, sound good? Okay. With one of the things that I do, I'm really obsessive with sales calls. I get to listen to sales call recordings. Mind you guys wait too. Can we move this? Is this better? Is this better? Ooh, yeah, all right. So I'm obsessive with listening to sales calls. I get to listen to recordings of them all the time. Where I'm going to move this. There we go. All right. I listen to those sales calls all the time. And one thing I've realized is that when I do training with people, they're totally normal. We have these great conversations. They're excited. They want to talk about their customers. And then they get on the phone, or I listen to that, and they change. You guys ever find that happens? right? And so you ever go and you go and talk to somebody and they're totally normal, and then when it comes time to talk to you about their product, they become somebody different, right? Right? So we do a lot of work on like neuroscience, psychology, social impact, all this kind of stuff. And so all this research we've done, there was a term I came up with this past year that absolutely hits the nail on the head. You guys ready for it? Yeah. Oh, no, not yet. Oh, I moved that slide. Okay, what's the definition of insanity? Yeah, doing the same things over and over, expecting different results. The new term that I've come up with is this. Doing the same thing over and over, expecting the same results, right? I added that there because it's part of change. I have a better slide next, but this one's good. So this is what I think about all the time, is that if we're doing the same thing we did this time last year, the pace of change is so fast, we're probably going to be outpaced, yeah? And you guys are seeing other people coming in with new businesses, new products, and you're like, how do we keep up, right? So when we talk about sales calls, sales things, the term that I've learned is don't be a salesy weirdo. Okay? And this is actually, as I've been thinking about all this stuff, I have a Sales Hero Academy. We talk about being a sales hero. We talk about all this great stuff. But this is the thing that is absolutely stuck with every one of my clients. We listen to sales calls. We go through stuff. And they go, hey, Joe, I was being a weirdo. Right? You guys ever feel sometimes you get weird? Right? You get in that mode. You're like, oh, everything's great. All right, here's the... And then you just change. Right? And I know I do it. And so when I change and when I become a weirdo, what do? I talk faster. I talk more. Do you ever feel like you do that? Right? Like, oh, this just feels weird. I'll keep going. Maybe it'll get better. Now. It sucks, right? So there's two kinds of weirdos that I've run into. One is that overly enthusiastic one. You guys probably see them when you go out and do networking. The, hi, how are you today? And you're like, you are not like that normally. If you are, you're weird, okay? The other one is the overly professional one. Sometimes we got to put on that suit of armor so that people know we're really smart and sharp. And so we go, hi, today I want to talk to you about these very important things, and how are you? And so we create this barrier between ourselves and our clients. You guys feel like that too, right? So, and I oscillate between those two. Sometimes I'm just super weird. How many of you guys are just weird normally? Okay, so this is the trick. Whatever you guys are normally, that's okay. The weirdo factor is the distance between your normal human self and this person you become. And I think, anybody ever seen that movie Glengarry Glen Ross? Yeah. Right? Any of these sales movies? Why do we put on this armor? Why do we do it?
Get ready for battle.
We're getting ready for battle. Why else?
Fear.
Fear. Vulnerability, right? Ego, all this stuff, fear of rejection, right? So like those movies, it's like, it's always be closing, it's always crush it and kill it and this. And I look at all these sales trainers, all this stuff that's out there, and that stuff drives me crazy, right? We want to close them, we want to convert these customers, all this. And I call that the sales bro mentality. Right? Is this whole idea that we are trying to convert customers. We're trying to convince them, manipulate them, trick it. And I think the biggest thing we want to do, we're going to talk today about conversations and really helping serve our customers. I was looking through on the Advocis site about some of the, the principles that you guys have around your industry. And I'm imagining all of you guys are really coming at this from a genuine place. You want to help your customers, right? Yeah. Right? So when we become a salesy weirdo, we don't serve them. So that's the challenge I'm going to give you guys. Find those instances of being weird and just watch for those and say, am I being who I am normally, or am I becoming a weirdo? Is that cool? Yeah. Does anybody have an example of being a salesy weirdo, either yourself or somebody that you ran into? This is a safe place. We can share.
In the room.
What's that? What if they're in the room, she asked. And I want names, and I want them written. Anybody have an example? All right, yes, Alex.
He wasn't being like being a salesy weirdo, and like the things that he was saying, I'm like, I'm pretty sure you should absolutely not be saying those things. Along the lines of, I need you guys to make a decision because my month-end deadline is on Monday.
Oh God.
I'm hanging up right now.
That's crazy. I love that. But you know what's funny is he's probably the only one I've heard that vocalizes that. Right? How many times do you guys feel like that? I know my background in selling and my teams that I've coached and worked with is that sitting on the back of our mind that we got to hit that target. Hi, I want to really help serve you. In the mind, we're like, we need to hit this number. That's where we got to switch that off. When we talk about, just being vulnerable, being, being open, checking that ego and serving your clients. That's one of the hardest things to do when you're trying to hit your numbers, right? So really thinking about that value. This is one thing I always talk about. As I go through this stuff today, I want you guys to think like a buyer. Not just like, oh, how am I going to use this to sell? How am I going to use this to get more clients? But how would it make you feel? Right? One of the weirdest parts about what I do for a business is when I talk to people on the phone, potential clients, I'm selling them selling. Right? So it's almost like Inception, where I'm like, hey, remember that thing I said to you here? That's what I'm going to teach your team how to do. And they go, oh, that's cool, because I've just helped them understand, and there's a pace that we work through. So it's really weird, right? So if you think selling is weird, try selling services. It's weird, okay? You guys, if you guys use pen and paper, write this number down. 97% of the market is actually not looking specifically for what you have, and I'm going to break those numbers down, okay? 3, 7, 30, 30, 30. Write these down, okay? 3% of the market is actively looking for the specific thing that you offer, right? So I'll give you an example. If you're looking to go draw something and you're going shopping and I want to find a very specific type of pen to be able to draw this thing, and I'm going to go shop around, and what am I going to compare them on? Price, right? Very specific. The next 7% is they're open, right? They're out shopping. They're saying, I want to draw something. I'm looking at pens, pencils, and I want to talk to you about the implements that you have to help me do these drawings, right? So that's the next one. The next one is the 30%. They're aware, but possibly for a future need. Have you ever heard this before? Let me take a look at what you have, and I'm going to consider it. I'm looking at options. Maybe in 6 months, I'm going to look at making this change. You guys ever hear that? Right? This is great. Not right now. What we're doing is good enough, right? The next one is unaware. They're unaware. They have a problem. There's a solution that you guys even exist. Okay? You guys ever run into those people? And then the last one, simple. There's no. They're not going to buy your thing. So what we want to think about is not how do we go and tap into the people that are like, I'm going shopping right now and buying a service, or I'm even open. Those are the people that are filling out forms, going and applying for stuff. I'm in buyer's mode. We want to tap into the people that are thinking about it, that are aware they want to do something. Some of the people that aren't even aware, they're thinking, hey, maybe this is for somebody else, right? Maybe you're talking to a husband, and the wife is there, and she says, you know what? This would be awesome for my sister, right? This would be awesome for a family member. You guys like referrals in your business? Right? So if you think about the way that you sell and you position your education around this side and not try and focus on selling to that top percent, you're going to have better conversations. You're going to get people to start seeing what's possible, right? Because selling breaks rapport, but education builds that rapport. Would you guys agree? Okay? So in your marketplace, if you're finding you're pitching constantly, telling people how it's all going to work to try and get them into a plan or into whatever you're doing, then you're probably missing a huge opportunity in this 67% in the middle. Do you guys agree on this? Yeah? Okay. Now let's talk about money. Money's weird, eh? And I always talk about money to everybody, but you guys are the first people that actually do money as a job. So this is cool. So money is funny. Money's funny, right? Back in the day, I think our relationship with money is like in Facebook, right? It's complicated. Okay? Back in the day, if I wanted something, right, and I would go to Mark, I would say, hey, I have these awesome furs. You got canoes. Let's trade. He'd be like, that's a good deal. He's like, give me one more fur. All right, cool. And you would just negotiate. It was so much easier. Remember back then? It was so much simpler, right? And then somebody was like, well, what if I don't have the thing that that person wants? They invented currency, which is just indirect exchange, okay? And that's what's happened since. And since all of that, people battle over this. They war over this. They fight over money. And our conversations around money become weird sometimes, right? So what we would need to realize is money is just a vehicle for change. Money is a vehicle for us to do what we need to do, and everybody's relationship with money is different, right? If you have a lot of money, $100 is not a big deal. If you don't have a bunch of money, $100 is a big deal, right? So we have to think about money in this way of how does it relate to the people that we're talking to in a way that makes sense and is meaningful for them. So one of the things, has anybody ever read Thinking Fast and Slow? A guy named Daniel Kahneman? Yes. He was a Nobel Prize winner for economics. And this one, he talks all about these psychology studies. And I love reading studies from like the 60s and 70s. They just mess with people. There was really no rules, right? And they could do anything they wanted. It was really cool. And so that was like real. But now they have to study fMRIs and all this stuff. But one of the things they looked at was the whole idea of priming. Does anybody know what priming is? Sort of? No, priming psychologically. Priming is basically something that, sorry? Yeah, so setting the stage for something future. So doing something now that will influence how somebody will think, feel, behave in the future. So they did these things around money priming, and they had people go into a room just like this, right? They'd sit them at tables, and they would have this first group go in. And the first group, before they went in, they would talk about money. They would talk about profit and cash. Some of them would see screensavers of cash. Subtly, they would introduce things about money. And in the control group, they didn't. So the first group, they would put them in this room, and they would put them at tables, and as they were filling out this questionnaire, somebody would come around and accidentally drop pencils on the floor. Okay? And the people that were primed with money would pick up half as many pencils as the people that weren't. Okay? Another group, they would put them in a room, and they would say, hey, go in this room, and while you go in there, can you grab these chairs and go set them up because you're going to have a conversation with somebody. Okay? The ones that were primed with money would put them about 118 centimeters apart, and the ones that weren't were 80 centimeters apart. Okay? So what it tells us, when we have, you remember that song, Money, Mine, I'm a Money, Money, I'm a Mine? Remember that jam? Right? So now, what happens when we think about money, right, Bobby, is one, we're less likely to help, and two, we create subconscious barriers. Would you guys agree? Right? So when people are looking for something from you, think about as a customer. When you know, when that person can think that you're going to buy from them, this usually happens, right? We make that switch, and I call it this, sales breath. Good slide, eh? I made that one up myself. But that's what it feels like. I remember, you know, we had our car stolen a couple years ago, and it was awesome. Why? New car. What's that? Yeah, man. They're like, here's a new car. So me and my girlfriend went out shopping for a car. And who ruined it? Salespeople, right? They did this. They're like, oh, hi. And you could just, and then you have money. You're a willing buyer. We're a perfect customer. But as we start to smell that sales breath, the pocket, you're like, get away from me. Don't touch my money, right? Even though we want to buy, right? Your customers, when you guys do it right, it's really effortless, right? They want to buy from you. But as soon as you start to think about what I want from them, this stuff starts to happen subconsciously, right? Again, like Phil said, I'm not making this up. So instead of what we want from them, what can we give in terms of value, especially the way that our relationships with our customers have changed? What can we give them instead? So every time you're going into a conversation with your customer, don't think, what do I want from them? Think, what can I give to them? Cool? Questions? Anybody want to throw anything out there on this topic? Will I take a sip of water? No? Okay. How many of you guys need more stuff to do? Nobody. Curtis. No, Curtis, a little bit. That's some whiskey. We'll have some whiskey later. We'll talk about it. This is what's going on. You guys are all busy, yeah? How many of your customers, your clients are busy? Right? How does it feel when people bombard you because they want something from you? Shitty, right? Yeah, it sucks. And then you get all these emails, and I know I love this lady that I've been following online for a while, but she sends all these emails, and I'm getting bombarded. So I'm saving them all as a case study because I'm going to go talk to her about it. But every email she sends, hey, did you attend this thing, friend? Hey, friend, how are you doing with this? And it's nonstop. I'm like, I'm busy. She's not adding value. She wants something from me. Right? So when we think about the stuff that we have to do, think about your clients and your customers. What's the stuff that they have to do? How can we make their lives easier? And then the 5 buying decisions, this is what I always remember. The 5 buying decisions go in this way. They first buy from you. Would you agree? Yes. Right? They buy whether they know, like, or trust you. What's the second one? Anybody guess?
Value. Your price. Your company. Simplicity.
My man. Company. They go, hey, if you get hit by a bus, can these guys deliver? Right? Do I believe in what they're believing? Do they all work well together? Is it just you as the lone wolf, or is this group going to help me out? Right? What's the third one? Anybody want to guess?
Product.
This guy. Here you go. My man. Product, then it's price, right? And time. Okay? And this is something that I remember hearing this years and years ago in a training I did, probably like 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And I've been testing this so many years. I'm like, it's true. If you go in somewhere and you don't like that person, are you going to buy from them? If you don't really believe in that company, you're going to buy that? No. But where do conversations always start?
Price and product.
Yeah, they go, what is it? How much is it? And so then we go, well, blah, 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 blah. We say all the things. You're like, you want to buy it? And they're like, oh, I got to think about it. I'm shopping around. You ever hear that, right? Same thing when we go and buy. So what you want to do is make sure that when you get into conversations, especially with new customers, how can you direct them away from product and price and get into a conversation where you build trust, where you get them to like you? You ask kick-ass questions, you get to what they're looking at, and you say, before I'm going to pitch you on all this stuff, let me get to know what you're looking for. Because you guys have probably unlimited things you can sell people, right? Lots of, anybody not have a ton of options that you can work on, right? It's complex. So if somebody's like, can you just tell me how much your service is? Is it that simple?
Nope.
Not really, right? So I just like this slide. Right? Me and my girlfriend just love pictures of stupid animals, so this is good. So how quickly are you authentic? And there's a difference between 100% authentic and 90%, right? Years ago, I did a study on myself. I wrote a blog and I had a podcast, and it was all about authenticity. And then, like, about a year later, I listened to it. I'm like, I was very inauthentic. And so I went through it. I was like, what's the challenge? And it's that difference between when you go into a new conversation with somebody, you know that we talk about being weird, that armor that you put on at the beginning, that's like, oh, we're going to see how this goes. We're going to create this barrier. And then only like 30 seconds, 90 seconds in, we're like, oh, ha. And we get into like a more human conversation. You know what I'm talking about? Right? So what we want to say is how quickly, how consistently can you be authentically you and attract people to you? Right? That's what attraction is all about. And if you hold on to that last 5 or 10%, that's the stuff that will hold you back. Would you guys agree? Right? So that's where if you build that authenticity, I worked with a spiritual coach for a while where we talked about this stuff, being authentic, being vulnerable, working on ego. And every time that I speak, even right now, I'm asking myself, is this for me or is this for you? Right? If you guys are nodding and taking notes, I'm like, that's as good. It has nothing to do with what I'm wearing, what I'm saying, but what matters is the impact that it makes for you. Right? So when you go networking, what's the question everybody asks you? Oh my God, the worst question, right? What do you do? And so when you go network, it was Young Entrepreneur Society, I remember I'm a serial networker. How many of you guys serial networkers? Right? I love it. But people go, what do you do? And we're like, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. We vomit all of our business shit on people, right? And they're just waiting for their turn. And they go, well, my turn is this. And we go, oh, cool. We exchange cards. We go home. We're like, I networked, right? I got this stack. Yeah, I got all these cards. But what should you be doing at networking? Connecting, building relationships, right? I stopped carrying business cards because I'm like, I don't know if I want to give people my card. Don't call me. It's weird. Right? Let's figure out, like, what's one thing you guys might do networking that's something that works really well for you, that allows you to connect with people faster. Anybody have any ideas?
See how you can help them in issues that they're dealing with.
Yeah, see how you can help them. What else?
You can ask them who do they want to meet.
Introduce them to people, right? Who else? Alex?
When people ask me what I do, when I went to networking events, I said I played ultimate frisbee.
Yes. Right? I remember we used to talk to a bunch of students at the school, and and when you ask people what do you do, and if they don't like what they do, now they feel obligated to tell you about their job, right? Ask them what they're interested in, right? Curtis, you have one?
I was just going to say, ask them what they're passionate about.
What are they passionate about? Yeah.
I would just make a goal to just make 1 or 2 deeper connections rather than
10
or more.
Totally. Volume's not better, right? Especially in your business. You guys are in a very high trust business, in a no trust era, which is kind of the title of the slide. So when we think about what do, we want to position this in a better way. So have you guys ever seen Simon Sinek, right? Right. This is if you guys haven't seen it, look up this guy's TED Talk about starting from why, how great leaders inspire innovation, right? But this is something that I made. I was looking for a perfect slide for this, but how many of you guys hate the elevator pitch? That's what that is, elevator. That was good, right? I just made that yesterday. But the elevator pitch, who's heard build an elevator pitch, right? That's the worst. And you go, and so people are the same thing. They've been practicing their elevator pitch, and they can't wait to tell. You can hear it, and they're like, I'm ready, right? So what we want to look at, this is what we're looking at. So I call it the deep breath pitch, where they're like, well, and they're like, oh, geez, okay, good, you worked on that, right? So what you want to do instead of a 30-second pitch, create a 5-second statement, something that disrupts patterns, right? You guys ever watched Cesar Millan, Dog Whisperer? Right? What does he do to disrupt patterns? He goes, and he pokes him in the butt. Don't poke people in the butt, but he does the bzz, and then the dogs go, oh, that's what you want your 5-second statement to be. So when somebody says, what do you do? Don't give them a whirlwind of all this stuff because they don't care, right? You got to disrupt mental patterns and make them go, oh, that was interesting. One of my clients, she works with female entrepreneurs. She does sales coaching, does all blah, blah, blah. And so we just said, she's like, I help female entrepreneurs kick ass, right? And they go, oh. And what are they going to ask then? How do you do that? Yeah. They're going to say, how do you do that? Right? So if you go, and I've got, Kelly is in a conference right now in San Diego. He owns Seriously Creative. He's working through a program that I've got right now, group coaching. And so he went out, he's like, I just always tell people I'm in marketing. How many people can say they're in marketing? All the marketing people. Right? How many people say you're in finance? All the finance. So what are you going to do to disrupt that pattern? So they go, whoo, that's cool, but not in a weird way, because you run into some of those people that are like, well, I help people find their special emotion unicorn to help them aspire. You're like, what are you even saying? What are you saying? Right? That doesn't make any sense to me. So it's got to be something tangible so that they go, that's cool. How do we do that? Then you basically create this 30-second disruption because they've given you the right to share it with you. Share it with them, right? And so now, when you talk about what you do, focus on them and customers and what you get excited about, how you help people, what excites you, and you have to be authentic about it. Would you guys agree on that? Right? Then they're going to want to say, oh, that's cool. So what is it? How does it work? They want to know more, and now they've opened up permission to go to 5 minutes. So 5 seconds, 30 seconds, 5 minutes, and then what's the last one? What do you think?
30 minutes.
30 minutes, right? And now they're salivating, right? I have a friend actually in the States. This is totally off topic. He was doing subject line testing. He's got a huge business. Do you guys want to know the number one subject, word in his subject lines that outperformed everything else? This is totally off topic. What do you guys think it was?
Can you ask?
He's sending out emails, and he figured out one word outperformed all the others in subject lines in his emails. So like hundreds of thousands of people. Huh? Was it?
Thank you. Love. Right away.
Miss.
Throbbing. I almost put that in there. That's why I thought about it. He's like, we're throbbing with anticipation for you to join our program. It crushed him by like 3 times. Anyways, totally off topic. So what we're doing here in all of this stuff, 5 seconds, 30 seconds, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, right, is we're earning the right to share more. Get your minds back in it. Come on, right? And it wasn't dirty. He was just saying, and that was the word. I was like, I like that subject line. So. Sorry, I did start it. Yes, you're right. So we're always earning the right to share more, and it's called the trust ladder, right? If they don't like the thing you said, you got to get better at the things you're saying, right? Especially if you're networking, okay? So personal branding, you guys have heard of personal branding, right? So in this, we're going to be consistent in your personal branding and in your digital branding, right? If you guys have LinkedIn, all this stuff, I know you've got a lot of regulations around some of the stuff you're doing, but what you want to do is check what others say about you. Ask people in your network, how do you introduce me? What do you say when you talk about me? Right? Because sometimes you're like, ooh, I don't want you to say it like that. Right? If you're not checking that, you want to check it. I think Phil gave me an intro one time. I was like, ooh, don't do it like that. Right? Because my business is evolving and changing. All right? Always test your language. You guys want to see the best test ever for checking your language? Ready? This is it. If they smile and nod, it's good. Say more of that. If they stare blankly at you, it sucks. Change it, right? Feedback loops. You ever do that where somebody prepare and you meet somebody and they're like blah 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 and you're like, oh, fantastic, and they go the next person and they've just said it 20 times. You're like, please stop doing it to people, right? So if you're going and talking to people about your services and you're not getting them fired up, change it, adjust. Cool? Okay. Anybody thought they were going to see this guy today? Right? I hate that guy. He's got joegirard.com. I'm joegirard.ca. He will not sell me that domain. I got his signed books. Super nice guy. But he was like world's greatest salesman, sold all these cars. Really cool, but like that old school style. But when he did it, it was really effective. So people kind of like in a lot of the new sales books, they bash him. But when he did what he did, he was the top. Right? So I have nothing against his style. Like he would be like in one of his books, I would keep every type of cigarette in my drawer because all my clients smoke different cigarettes. Not probably that applicable today, right? Maybe you got different craft beers or whatever. I don't know what people are up to now. But that's what he would do. He had all these systems and things. He remembered everybody's birthdays. Remember he had Rolodexes, all that stuff. He crushed it because he paid attention. He adapted with change. Stuff has changed now. He's not selling as much. He's doing speaking now. People are like, what are you talking about? But anyways, just so you guys know, that's not me. Okay, this isn't me. This is me. And so it's good for my SEO. We look at like great sales trainers. They're like, hey, that guy looks younger. So for now, right?
Whatever he's doing.
He's working, man. I'm going to buy his program. So I'm just going to do Joe Girard quotes and books, and that's what I'm doing. Anyways, so sales history, I'm going to go into this because this is really important when we think about the relationships with our buyers and sellers. Back in the day, 1925, way back, right? Back when I was born. E.K. Strong. You guys ever heard of that guy? Right? You know what he invented? Anybody? The AIDA method. Remember what that is? Right? He was the father of probing, closing, handling objections, back in 1925. Anybody go to training around that stuff? Right? Okay. Then in the 70s, they invented professional buyers. Why'd they do that?
Things changed.
Things change? What specifically?
Protect consumers.
Telephones. The telephone's done.
Okay. The radio. Professional buyers, you pretty much, they were invented to stop people from selling to them. Right? They put a person in place to say, stop tricking us. Because in the 40s and 50s, salespeople learned how to manipulate. They learned psychology tricks to be able to get people to buy from them. And so this was the first major divide in that relationship that we still feel these days. When you call a company and you're like, oh, I want to talk to you. And they're like, whoa, hold on. I'm going to put you onto the purchasing department. You're like, oh, I'm never going to talk to anybody now. Right? Because those people are there to thwart your efforts. And so what they do, some people even so far as would have like flashcards of all the different closing techniques. And I remember a story where the seller would come in, the person would go, that was an assumptive close. Boom, you have one more chance. And so like shit like that, right? So that's why they invented professional buyers. Crazy, right? So there's lack of trust. People were sales tactics, negotiators. Then in '88, you guys ever hear of spin selling? Right? Something crazy. I have a video on spin selling online. I have the #1 video on spin selling on YouTube. I outrank the guy that wrote the book. Fantastic. I get a ton of speaking gigs from it. They're like, oh, he must know it more than the author. I'm like, it's 5 minutes as a book review. Do your homework, kids. Okay? In spin selling, what was the big thing about spin selling, consultative selling? Anybody? Here in the back. No? They ask questions. Right? So they would have, and the days, remember those days of the 3-martini lunch and let's sit down and get to know you, right? And your customers are busy now. Does that stuff work anymore? Right? Let's go do a bunch of probing and asking questions. Kind of, but not the way it used to. What needs to happen in today's market is along these lines. You guys ever heard Challenger Sale, Insight Selling, any books like those? Right? The new, Bobby's read them. Right? The new ones are all about you guys demonstrating value, educating, providing insights, bringing something to the table so that they go, wow, this is valuable, and then you earn the right to build that relationship. So a lot of the stuff out there is like relationships selling is dead. I don't believe that. Right? We need to build relationships, but we're not leading with relationships. We're leading with adding value, leading with cutting through the crap that they have in their inboxes, on their phone, and saying, hey, I have something valuable for you, I have something interesting for you, and then we earn the right to build that relationship. Would you guys agree with that? Yeah. Okay. Moving forward, where we're going, I think the big thing here is it's just about building trust, right? Sales is going to keep changing. Technology is huge right now. We're doing a lot of the projects I'm doing right now are built around automation and websites and figuring out behavioral stuff online so that we earn the right to be able to get people on the phone, because it's harder to get people on the phone and get people to engage with us, especially in a lot of really busy markets, yeah? Okay? So that's what we're looking for. I want to ask you guys, I don't know if you've seen this is good, but I love Family Guy. What changes have you guys seen in your industry?
Well, there's tons of automation.
Tons of automation, yeah.
Information. All simple stuff, and then insurance is going to go to automation.
Yeah. What else? This is a good slide too. I like this one.
I find that more times we can give away the secret sauce or the information and the value. People will hold on to that or think about it for 3-4 months, and then they'll come and buy stuff once we've given them all the free answers.
Okay.
Then they come and ask us for the product or the purchase or whatever.
Okay. What else? What else have you guys seen? Like, let's say over the last 10 years, what are some big shifts you guys have seen? Compliance. Education's big on that in the U.S. right now as well, right? What else?
Information is available more readily.
Yeah. So you guys are almost like, what's that, WebMD, right? People can go on there like, oh, I figured out what my symptoms are. You're like, don't do that, right? So the holistic approach is where you're at now. You're talking about bigger picture stuff, I would imagine, in your market, right? You're talking about how it all is connected together because there's so many moving parts. You have to help people simplify. You have to connect the dots. Would you say that's true, yeah? What else have you seen change? Anything else?
Expectation.
Yeah. In what way?
I guess, speed. So people want everything yesterday.
Yeah. Would you guys agree on that, yeah? People want everything yesterday, right? And you guys are busy, so you're like, no problem. And then you're sweating till 4 in the morning, right? What else? Any other changes? In the back. Come on, speak up. Can you hear me?
Demographics.
Oh, how so?
There's a lot more millennials out there that
They're the worst. Yeah. Have you seen questions change or the conversations change? Anybody?
In the same line of that is that for younger people, it's like, why do I care about 20 years from now? That's
Okay. Cool. Right? Yeah, and I think culturally, if we look at, I've done a bunch of stuff on like the generation stuff, as things have changed, that's what it's called, generation stuff. But as generations have evolved and changed, the values have changed, right? You know, the sort of the, you know, back in the day, I know like my parents, everything was all about finance and planning for the future and stuff like this. But with the pace of change, especially the way employees are and the way, you know, like you know, you see like like my generation is probably around the Gen X side, a little bit later. But, you know, you saw your parents, you know, the loyalty with companies, that changed. Right? You don't see careers lasting as long, so finance isn't as secure. So there's a lot of changing conversation around how jobs works, how security works, and there's so much information out there. How do you do it, right? So you guys are in a market where there's lots of changes. These generations are changing. The cultural stuff has changed. The values have changed. Plus we've globalized. It's tough, right? So what you want to do is instead of saying, you know, I'm going to come in and be able to help these people with this specific thing, we need to open up better conversations, yeah? Okay? So this is one thing I was, look at that tiny little water ball. Think of yourself as a change management expert, right? Has anybody ever studied change as a whole, like companies, individuals? I did, cool. Work with the forces of change in a company. I don't know if you've heard this stuff. Anybody heard this? Forming, storming, norming, performing, right? I learned this years ago, and what this is as in a company, I remember years ago we did a new software rollout in the company I worked with, and we actually planned these almost to the month over the course of 3-4 years. When you make change in an organization, how many of you guys, some of you guys work with companies? Right? So if you're working with companies, their companies go through this change, right? When they first start in groups, remember you work in groups, you form the groups. You figure out who's going to be in charge, who's leading, who's driving that conversation, and people are usually not that vocal. Once everything's set up, people start to get vocal. Why are we doing this? Why do we need this? What's happening here? And they start to question things, and people rise up as very vocal, you know, battles to this. And then once that all calms down, we say we're still going to push through this. People start to normalize, but the cool stuff's not happening yet. And so when storming happens, people push back and say, oh, maybe we won't do that. Have you ever had that happen where you're trying to institute maybe even big plan in an organization, and people start pushing back, right? Yes? You've seen that happen? They push back, and because people push back, then we go, oh, we can't do it. No, people don't want to do it. It's too much, too fast, too soon, not right now. Let's wait 6 months. And then 6 months go by. We got to wait again. And then 6 months go by. Now 4 years have gone by. Whoa, is that me? What's happening there? Was that me? Ooh. Things have changed. I don't know. Maybe I've got a little better. No, and my angel did get its wings. It should be fine. There's power on this, right? Looks like. And there we go. See what happens.
Just to get your attention.
Oh yeah, we'll change it. If we shut down, I know this stuff anyways. So what happens? You guys have seen that? Did people push back? Curtis, this should be fine. People push back, and then they get into a comfort zone. But because that comfort zone has now not caused any new cool things to happen, they also resist that change. Because nothing, I know especially in sales training, is if they're not seeing results, they go, oh, well, we're not seeing it, so we're going to put it on hold right now. But it's right before that performance stage, because people are building new habits. They're building new processes, new systems, new tools, new people, and then that performing stage happens. Does that make sense? Yeah. Right, so in an organization, this is what happens when we go through change. Personally, there's a great book called Transitions. Was it William Bridges from the 80s? 3 stages of personal change. This was something that really helped me when I was looking at how to help my customers, is that people, when they go through change, go through this. They go through endings, they go through a neutral zone, and they go into new beginnings. Okay? Think about your own personal change. If something's changing, whether it's good or bad, right? Because a lot of times you're talking about people about good stuff, right? So you're like, you're going to be able to do these things, and sometimes it makes no sense why they don't do it, right? In your mind, it makes sense. But whatever they're going to change, something has to die. Something has to end. What kinds of things have to end when they do really cool financial plans?
The relationship with the bank.
Relationship with the bank ends. Yeah. That's good. What else? What else ends?
Bad habits and bad.
The habits. Spending habits. We can't just spend this? What else?
Financial insecurity.
Insecurity.
Marital status.
Marital status. Yeah. So things are changing. When they're going through this, something ends, something dies, right? But the neutral zone is this place when we go through changes where it's our time for reflection, our time for self-development, to say, what do I want at the end of this? What do I want when I go through this change? How am I going to feel when I go through this change? If you're going to get a new job, you're going to get new finances, you're going to get married, have a kid, you're saying, you know, freedom. Sometimes freedom's going to change. Sometimes other stuff's going to end. But what do I want to be? Who do I want to be through this change? And that's the neutral zone, so that when we go to new beginnings, the beauty about new beginnings, we don't actually know when they're going to happen. We only know them when we look back and say, in retrospect, that's when it changed. Okay? And so what you guys really want to think about when you're talking to your clients is helping them work through the fact that these things are going to change. And that what do you want to see because of this? If you can help them think through the neutral zone, they're going to start to see the possibilities on the other side. But if we just talk about all these new beginnings, this is where most people talk. They say, you're going to have this, 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 and this. And because change is hard, just like if you ever try and change your cable company, how many of you guys just don't do that because it just sounds like a lot of work, right? That's on the very low side. So think about that. Plus now you're talking about big life changes. That's why it's hard. Because we know that there's this process we have to go through. Help them through the mental process. Prime them psychologically to work through this, and you're going to be in a good spot. Yeah? Yes?
Can I ask a question?
No way.
Oh, okay.
Of course.
Oh, all right. So of the breakdown of the 97% of the market that's not buying.
Yeah.
If we're focusing on, as you said, we're at the new beginning stage all the time if
Yeah.
we're effective salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're at the unaware of the future, or aware or even unaware, they're still back at, they haven't even gotten to endings.
Mm-hmm.
But we're pounding on them at part 3.
Somewhat. With the way that you want to structure your education, your messaging, you want to make people start to think differently about themselves, right? If you can get people to think differently about themselves, they'll think differently about you. So what we're looking at is figuring out a way to make them feel like the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. Right? The pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. And so when we're talking to people, we're letting them know that it's okay to change. Right? We're normalizing change. So when you're saying, you know, these are all the things that are out here, but most people struggle to take that first step because it's a lot of work. It seems like a lot of work to pick up the phone and ask some questions. But when you guys have conversations, let's take baby steps. One of my clients, we tested, hey, let's book an 8-minute coffee break. Let's just talk real quick chat. It's crushing it as an opening thing in cold market in like supply chain management. Because we tried 7 minutes, 6 minutes, 5 minutes, 9 and 10, 8's killing it. They're like, let's have an 8-minute coffee break. They're like, that doesn't seem that painful. But if you're like, let's sit down and go through your supply chain, we're going to do hour after hour, and I'm going to show you this 75-slide deck that we have, and you're going to believe how we do things. They're like, beat it. We're like, let's have an 8-minute coffee break. We'll tell you some of us, tell you about you. I got some ideas I want to share with you. See how it goes. Right? Does that make sense? Does that answer?
It does, thank you.
Cool. I was like, I think that's good. Anybody else on that? An 8-minute coffee break crushes it. You guys can try that. Now, change thoughts and questions. We're going to go like this, because I have this. Okay? This is what you want to think about when you're talking to people, is that these are the questions that you want to think about, maybe ask them, but know that this is going on in their head. What else is going to have to change? Not just this stuff, but what else is going to have to change? The relationship with the bank, relationship with their family, the conversation they're having with their family, some of the habits that they're building. There's all sorts of impacts that are happening, right? Implications, cause and effect type things that happen when we make change. Who do you need to become through this, right? Because you're going to have to maybe build some better habits. Right? You're going to have to stand behind it. You know, anybody that goes and says, I'm going to start a diet, and they post it on Facebook, and then a week later, they're like, check out this new chicken McNugget deal I found. Right? That's me. But to be able to do that, you have to stand by the change and be accountable and, make sure that you can see yourself through that, because it's hard to make change. Okay? Who should you surround yourself with is another question. Right? How do you rally people around this cause of making change? So if you're going into this, one of the questions you can ask your clients is, like, who's going to support you? Who's not going to support you? Right? In doing this, what kind of a network do you have to do this? Do you know anybody else that's done this before? If they don't know anybody that's done this before, you guys know that theory is like you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with, right? We've all heard that kind of stuff. But that's why. If they don't know anybody that's done this before, their friends are going to suck at helping them through this. Right? So if they don't have a support group, then you make, not support group, but support friends, but you make sure that you're going to be that person for them. Because you might be the only person that's going to be their cheerleader, right? So you got to adapt your role to what they're going to need. Implications we got to consider, secondary plans. Maybe this is like what they want to do, but they got to build some stuff before. Phil was telling me a story a couple weeks ago about trying to help this person, and he said, nah, we can't help them here because this stuff needs to be in place first. A lot of you guys do that, right? You got to put all these things in place so that that makes it more fun to do that. Because people do want to change, but it's got to be fun. It's got to be accessible. Habits. You guys know about habits? You know what that area is called in your brain? Sorry? Anybody? What?
Yes.
The basal ganglia. I don't know. I just thought somebody might know. Okay. And there's a book by a guy named Charles Duhigg called The Power of Habit. Anybody read that? Read that book. It's a kick-ass book. But what he talks about in this basal ganglia, they studied the way people build habits, the way things work. And this is going to help you guys help people through change. Is that when we're building habits, we don't change habits. We overwrite them with new and more powerful habits. So if you have a tendency to overeat, overspend, oversex, whatever you're doing, that habit's there, so you have to build new ones on top of that. So when they do fMRI studies on the brain, they can see all this stuff firing. And so they studied these things, and they studied mice. And what they did with mice is they did this test where this door opened. And then down the hallway on the left was some chocolate, and the right was nothing. And at first, the mouse, its brain, because it's trying to figure out what to do, it just was firing all the time. But once it started to build habits, this is what happened. The mouse, the brain would fire when it heard the click. The brain activity would shrink, and then when they got the reward, they would fire. So when you're thinking about habits, when you're building these, the goal, we always do this when we build systems and processes with your clients, if you give them too much to do, too much to think about, their brain's going to be firing all the time, and you're not building the right habits. You've got to figure out those right steps so that you figure out what's the cue, what's happening with them right now, what's the routine we can build over top of that. When this happens, we do this so that there's a reward. And then you can stack these things. But if you don't build habits in that way, you won't be able to sustain them. Right? Does that make sense? And you guys, anybody heard it takes 21 days to build a habit? Yeah. It's not true. That was a guy called Psycho-Cybernetics, was a book in the 40s, and he just said something because he was a plastic surgeon, and all these gurus were like, we're going to build 21-day programs because that's going to build habits. Yours is still good. But because, do you know what it actually takes? How many days it does take to build a habit?
90.
Depends. Yeah, that's close. 90, a little before that? 67. It takes 67. Right? Because anybody can do anything for 21 days, but that habit isn't strong enough. So if you're going to do a program, you've got to reinforce it. Right? You've got to do something that tacks into those habits and gets people doing it. So if you've got clients that are coming on board, you're trying to build these new habits, help them through the first 2 or 3 months, and then they're going to have habits, and then they won't need you as much. You guys agree? You've seen that before, right? But if you just get them going on stuff, they go back and you say, what happened? They go, I have no idea. Habits. Say Joe said. Cool. Anybody heard of the triune brain, the 3-part brain? Anybody else?
No.
No. Good. Cool. So the brain, the way it evolved, this is going to help you as you guys are talking about sales, is the oldest part of our brain is reptilian. You know what that's for? Survival. Fight or flight, our breathing, autonomic nervous system, all that kind of stuff. Right? Then as we evolve, we build this limbic system. That's where the basal ganglia is. Anybody know what that's for?
Habits.
What's that?
Habits.
Partly habits, yeah. Memory, yeah, associative memory for emotions, right? Associative context, relationships, and that's why we create tribes, right? And as we evolve, the neocortex is for what? Yeah, reasoning, thinking, write that down. Thinking, stats, our math brain, all that kind of stuff. But what happens, you guys have seen this before, we think that our brains are these big computers, so we beat our clients over our head, features and benefits. You ever heard anybody do that to you? Right? They're like, look at all the things it can do. Oh, blah, blah, blah. We go, oh my God. Our brains are not these like really powerful computers. The way our brains work is our reptilian system is built in a way that it's a gatekeeper. If it's not dangerous, we ignore it. If it's not new and exciting, we ignore it. Right? It just says we don't care. If it's new and exciting, we go, hey, limbic system, check this out. And limbic's like, hey, that is pretty cool. And they go, how does this apply to me? We tap into associative context. We tap into memory. Does this relate to me? Does this make sense? Do I have any ideas of how this would work? Have other people done that? Oh, that's cool. Does my tribe do that? Social proof, all that kind of stuff. And then if it likes that, it says, hey, neocortex, check this out. So whatever we do an activity where we do features, advantages, benefits. You've heard that before, right? We add emotions on the end, but then we build emotions to the front. So you're going to feel this way. Wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be exciting? Wouldn't you want to stop being overwhelmed? All of those things. That's how we tap into that limbic system, because all your features might be great, but if you list 10 features and benefits, people glaze over. They can't remember it. Our brains aren't designed for that. They go, that's dangerous. I'm being sold to. Does that make sense? Anybody have any thoughts? Anybody have an example of when that's happened to them, where somebody, you liked what you wanted to buy, and then somebody just beat you over the head with logic? If you don't have a story, put up your hand if that's happened. All right? All right. So we've talked about this, probing, closing, handling objections. So what I think about is all that stuff is old, right? And if you're handling objections, right? Have you guys heard this? Handle objections, how to handle objections. Somebody says, I don't have the money. You say, well, what we're going to do is this, right? If you're handling objections, it's too late, right? So as we build conversations, we build roadmaps, what we're trying to do is instead reduce resistance. That's a good slide too, right? The donkey. So when we're thinking about resistance psychologically, resistance comes in two forms. The first one is called knee-jerk. It's reactance. It's that thing that makes us go, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't have the money. And they're like, oh, salesperson, right? And then the last one is anticipated future regrets. Okay? Let you sit on that for a sec. All right. An anticipated future regret is basically, if I do this, I'm going to regret it. But if I don't do this, I'm going to regret it. And there's a thing, I remember reading a book, I forget what book it is, but it's called the sales moment, and I really like the way they describe it. It's that moment in your brain where you're playing this video of what your life is right now, and it switches over to what your life could be. And if you can't get somebody to change that video, they won't take action. You guys with me on that? Yeah. Right? So when you're talking to people, you're trying to keep those knee-jerk reactions at bay, right? Reduce resistance, and so you don't say things, I call it the love triangle. You know who the love triangle is between in a sales conversation? Anybody want to guess? It's between me, you, and what? Yeah, and the info, the product. If you start saying things too soon, too early, they start falling in love with that info. And you can see they're talking to you, and they're like, oh, okay, how am I going to make that work? Okay. And they start to then ask questions. Well, what about this? And you're like, no, we're going the wrong direction because you brought in the wrong threesome, right? Rookie magic. Anybody ever seen this happen when somebody's just hot out of the gates and they're doing awesome? Anybody see, new people that are just killing it, right? And what happens about 18 months? Performance starts to drop. Why does that happen?
Start talking too much about the product, or they know too much about the product.
Okay, yeah. What else? Performance just drops dramatically. You guys have seen this, right? What's that? Ego.
Keep up the right habits.
Habits. What else? Yeah. Self-doubt. Inconsistency. Was it enthusiasm? Yeah. Too sales. Was it compliance? We said. I don't know. Just chop their legs out. No, you can't say that. Right? The kiss of death in every industry, especially when you're selling. And like back in the education day, we didn't even call it selling. Right? Like everything we're doing, if we're trying to get a customer to make a decision, it's sales. We're trying to influence people to take action. But the kiss of death is one word: expert. We become an expert. We know all the answers. And what we do is we anticipate their problems. So we're in a conversation, we say stupid things like this. Oh, wait, stop it. I know exactly what you need to do. You guys ever had that happen? How does that feel? Not good, right? Or here's what you should do. I'll stop you right there. Here's what we're going to do. And you're like, it's the same type of thing as when my girlfriend comes home and she says, I had a bad day at work. And I say, no problem. Here's what you do. How does that work? Is that good? No. It's the same thing in this. I know not to say that. Sometimes I screw it up, right? Anybody else screw that up? Right, okay, good. We're all on the same page. Yeah, it's not about the nail, right? You know, right? Yeah. It's about the bookshelf, right? Where you can put, anyways, okay. If you're a doctor and you screw this up and you pre-prescribe, what happens? Malpractice. You kill people. So hopefully you guys aren't killing people, right? But if you're a doctor, you do this, and if you're sales, you kill the opportunity for the business to move forward. So what you want to do is we do a lot of stuff on asking good questions. We ask level 1, level 2, level 3 questions and help people understand what their problems are so that they tell you, okay, so if that's happening, this is happening, could I do this? And you want them to say, could I actually take a plan that looks like this? Could I do it? You go, Yeah, you know, let's look at that. But if they're not framing their own problems and you're pre-prescribing, you're reducing the chance of them taking action because you want to collaborate with your clients. Would you guys say that's true? So, do we know their story? When you're talking to people, I know we do a lot of stuff when we enter in our CRM or our notes. If at the end of a conversation with one of your clients you don't know their story well enough, go back and say, how do I make sure I know their story? So here's the question, 10 to the story. Have anybody heard of the Love Lab in University of Washington? Right? Anybody not heard of the Love Lab? All right, here's a story then. So the University of Washington has this thing called the Love Lab, and they've been testing relationships all these years. And what they've found is the difference between successful and unsuccessful relationships, ones that ended in people being happy, ones that end up in divorce, breaking up. And they found these things called bids. Okay, and bids are anything in a relationship that sort of is a little outreach. So your partner will say, hey, look at what the stupid thing the dog is doing. Did you hear that thing on the radio? Hey, I'm thinking about, you know, changing my hair. All of these things that happen in a relationship, these are called bids. The successful relationships, they responded to their partner's bids around 80%. The unsuccessful ones responded to bids at around 15%. Okay? And what that is we're just not paying attention. Okay? And so we're not curious about what's going on. So one of the examples was there's a man and a woman. Hey, this is perfect. We're looking out. Oh, look at how nice this is. We're looking out over the patio, and the wife says, hey, look at how beautiful that tree is. And what's a typical response from the guys? Yeah, uh-huh. Right, what else? What tree? What else? What else does the guy say? No.
It's a nice tree.
Yes, it's a nice tree. No, you're so beautiful, baby, right? What else? What else happens? All that stuff. Conversation, communication is so magical is that if I have a thought in my head right now, I translate an impulse that moves my tongue and my mouth in a way, vibrates the air. It's hitting you in the ear to your hammer anvil stirrups, creating an audio impulse, and I'm now translating this thought into your mind. It's magical. And when somebody goes, what does that do to your conversation? It kills it. Right? When you're talking to your clients and you're asking them questions and they're telling you stuff and you're going, okay, here's what we should do. What does that do to your conversation? It kills it. So what should he say instead? There's a very specific turn of phrase. When she says, look at how beautiful those trees are, what should he say?
What do you like about the trees? Tell me more.
Tell me more, right? He should say, what about those trees do you find beautiful? Okay? She says, look at those beautiful trees. What about those do you find beautiful? When your clients say, I'm worried about this change, what do you say?
What about that change makes you worry?
What about this change you worry about? We've tried that before, it didn't work. What do you say? What about that thing that you tried before, it didn't work? It's really simple, right? But when we don't listen, we're telling that to people. I had one client, she was in Germany, and she worked for a clinical trial company, and she had these great questions that she asked. One of them I liked is like, if I can wave a magic wand in a year from now, what would success look like? Everybody responded to that. They're like, oh, that sounds fun. It's like a game, right? And then what she'd say at the end, she'd go, yep, that makes sense. Now, let me ask you this, blah, blah, blah. They'd say stuff, and I went, yep, that makes sense. And I went through the transcript, and I went, wait a minute. I started highlighting. She said 11 times, yep, that makes sense. She didn't celebrate what they said. She didn't, ask for confirmation. She didn't take it deeper. So when we talk about the conversation roadmap, what we're doing is instead of going wide with our questions, go deeper. Right? Take your conversations deeper. Say, you told me about that thing there. Well, you and your husband, or you and your wife were talking about this. When you said that, that makes me think, how did that happen? Or why did you guys do that? Okay, so when that happened, then what happened? Oh, okay, I get it. That's how our conversation should be structured. But if we are just going through our predefined list of questions, some of you guys have a lot of questions you want to answer, and so we go through, right? And sometimes I get caught in that too, right? We just shove it all at them, tell me everything, and there's a thing called mirror neurons on our brains. They start to resist that. You guys ever feel that, right? You get now they're like, okay, can I just take this stuff home? Let me think about it. I'll get back to you. You guys ever see that happen, right? So that's what's happening there is we got to take it deeper. We got to tap into the emotions. Do you guys all agree on this, first of all? Okay, good. Anybody not agree? Cool. I changed this slide. You know what I changed? Put change on there because we're talking about change today. So the conversation has changed. I'm going to say, I think I've said change. We're going to count it after how many times we said change. But the conversation has changed. And what I'm trying to emphasize is the removal of waiting for your turn to jump in and just say all your stuff. Okay? And I used to think like this. You know that skipping rope game, Double Dutch? Right? Where it's like you're just waiting for your turn to jump in and say all the things. We want to stop doing that. And so what I think, and then I found this video that perfectly illustrates what we think we're doing versus what we're actually doing. You guys ready? Hope this works. It's really loud. That's what we think we're doing. This is what we do. They say, tell me about your services. What do you do? Well, okay. That's what happens, right? You told me it wasn't as loud. That's good though. It was good. Woo. So now you guys can't hear me. So, but that's what it's like, right? We think we're doing all these really cool things, but when we're thinking about what we want to say, we're doing this exact right here. So instead, we ask those questions. We get to the heart. What the hell's going on in your world? Ah, cool. So we get to this point where we get what they're talking about, okay? So this is what I teach people all the time. We ditch that script, right? Sort of. If you have a script, it's too robotic, right? You can tell when somebody's reading from a script, right? But without some kind of a framework, what happens? You get the perfect quote, shit goes sideways. I like that. I love that's what happens. So without a script, we're winging it, right? We're like, what am I? Remember I said earlier, I just start talking more. I'm like, what am I even saying? But what you want to do is instead build this roadmap. So I can send this out to you guys as well. We do lots of stuff on this. We're going to blast through it. The conversation roadmap, this is the way we structure it. So it makes your life a lot easier. On the first level, we do a lot of preparation. You guys do a lot of preparation for your clients? Yeah. Right? So that preparation, right? Have anybody heard of the RAS, the reticular activating system in our brain? Okay. You know what that's for? Yes. Yes. Cool. You want to say it or you want me to say it?
Connect one thing to another.
Sorry?
Your friend buys a new car.
And yeah.
White Chevy Bronco, whatever that looks like. Right?
OJ, yeah.
And so all of a sudden, that's all you start seeing are white Chevy Broncos.
Yeah.
And no, Chevy doesn't make the Bronco.
They do now. It's a new business. But same thing, yeah. You start to see the car that you didn't have. And when I first started golfing, I didn't know all the signs up for golf courses everywhere, right? Ooh, look at golf course everywhere. We can go right now. The other one is it's a survival mechanism. If you're in a crowded room and somebody says your name, even at a low level, you can hear it, right? It's part of our brain that basically keeps us safe. When you do the right preparation, we do a lot of stuff on pre-call planning so that we go, okay, before we talk to somebody, we have 5 power questions that we go through, and I can share that all with you guys later. But it's basically setting our minds in this place so that when we get into our conversation, remember the habits? Our routines make our brain activity less. So we can engage that system 2 of our brain to be more conscious. But if we're winging it and doing too many things, we miss what they're saying, we miss body language, we miss opportunities to connect, we miss opportunities to ask questions because we didn't prepare properly. When your RAS is planned properly, you're priming your brain to say, when this happens, do this. So when they start talking about this because you really wanted to know that, you go, oh, that reminds me. Now you're talking about something that's important to them. Yeah? Okay? And then we talk about this. The opening, how you open is really strong. That's that authenticity piece. Make sure you nail every conversation that you're authentic, that you're genuinely you. That's one of the big things that most people don't get right, is we wait for the relationship to develop. I always say, have the conversation that you would have with your client in 6 months right away. Right? Be genuine. Be willing to challenge. Open up that dialogue. Be yourself, and they will chase you more. Do you guys agree with that? Yeah? Cool. Then what happens? Anything happens, right? We just said this. Instead of going wide, right? All these common scenarios, you want to map out what could happen and prepare yourself for those. And this is the perfect thing. We want to know where they are now, where they want to go, and what does change look like in the middle, right? Delta is change. Perfect. So instead of going wide, we go deep. So if you do this properly, you ask the right questions, you go there, you want to get to a place where you can say, okay, let me just make sure I have your story correct. We do a lot of training on story structure and how we can do this. So your story goes like this, you're doing this, but you're also seeing these things happening, and if this happens, then this happens, yeah? And they're nodding along, you're like, cool, this is making sense to them. You say, but if we could find a way to do this certain thing here, then you'd be able to do this, and now you're in this position to do that. And you say, have I missed anything? And they go, no. That's the only time you ever want to hear no. Right? They say, no, that's totally what it is. They say, okay, here's what I think we should do. Right? So we paraphrase properly to a point where you go, I get it. I get your story. I get what you're trying to do so that I can now feel comfortable moving forward. If you don't feel comfortable with moving forward, you got to stop and say, I don't get it. You said this, but you probably mean this. Are you sure you would do this? Because you said this, but also this is happening. You guys ever do that to your clients? Right? Make sure you don't pass go because you will not collect that $200. Okay? Then when you position your offer, language I always use is, all right, here's what I'm thinking. And then instead of a deep breath and pitch, we know the type of offer we're going to give them. We've simplified the complexity of that, so we hit it as close to the, when we talk about the nail, close to the head of the nail as possible, so they go, yeah. And the pitch is now this big on your conversation instead of this big, right? Because the conversation has led them to a natural conclusion, right? You guys with me on this, yeah? Okay. Then once they do that, what can happen? We're going to ask for commitment. And there's 2 ways to ask for commitment. Question mark, exclamation mark. Does anybody know the difference?
One's having them closed.
I'm sorry, what's something?
One's closed and one's open.
Okay, one's closed, one's open. What do you say?
One's having them decide how much they're going to pay, and one is you maybe presenting an offer.
Okay, tell me what you see the difference here. Okay, Phil, that was really good. I'm glad that we could do all this. So would you like to maybe look at moving forward? How would that feel if you did this versus, all right, so I'm excited about what we're doing. The next step is we're going to do this, this, and this. What's the difference?
One's asking, one's telling.
Yeah. If you're absolutely excited to help them, you tell them. Because you can, we do call evaluations called rubric. And if you blow all of this stuff and you nail commitment, you will crush it. Influencing people, because you have to be viscerally excited about them moving forward and believe in what they should be doing. And when you lean into that and you have that exclamation mark, they will feel it. That's that mirror neuron. If you're excited, they're excited, right? But if all of a sudden you've had this great conversation, but you have a weak ask, it's always hard to say that, weak ask, right? Don't be weak ask, right? So if you have a weak ask and you kind of lean, if it could be just maybe we could talk about moving forward and just if it's okay, right? If that's how you're asking, all of a sudden the brain, the psychology of their brain, the reptilian system kicks in and goes, whoo, they're not confident, now I'm not confident, right? So you've got to get good at asking people, influencing them, and being excited about them moving forward. Do you guys agree on that, yeah? Okay. And if they do that, we're going to say, so we got to make sure it's comfort zones. They're going to either say yes, no. They're going to say maybe. If it's yes, fantastic. If it's no, you work on multiple commitment objectives. Okay, if you don't want to do that, why don't we do this? Right? If they're like, I'm not sure if I want to do that. Okay, let's do this. Let's book a time to do this. And now we've got multiple commitment objectives. Instead of just asking once, we ask 3 sort of escalating ones there. And then what you do with that, you build that into your preparation so you know the types of commitments you're going to ask people before you go into that call, so you don't try and wing it on the spot. Okay? Then if they say maybe, they're either going to have a stall or an objection. A stall is no specific reason. They just need some time. Don't try and push them. Say, that's great. All the time you need. Here's what we're going to do. In the meantime, why don't you look at this? Or have I also told you this? Add one more feature, add one more emotion, add one more benefit at the end. So they go, actually that might help. But you don't want to tell them, let's do this. But if they give you an objection, then this is when you handle objections. If you're doing them up here, you're going to be moving through the conversation way too quickly. Okay? Yeah? Heck yeah, cool. So then we build that all into the conversation, and these are all the things that we do when we go through it. We've talked about a lot of this stuff. So at each one of these stages, we build tools for that. So 5 power questions, using the you and because, we make sure it's all about them, using empathy, questions, understanding, all this stuff. We talk about change a lot. But does this make sense in terms of a flow for a conversation? Okay? And I'll send this out to you guys. Cool. So this is what we're looking at. What high performers do, right? So they play the long game. How many of you guys play the long game with your clients? Right? It's way easier. It's harder when you're first starting, and that mindset of, I don't need this business, especially when you're getting started out, is hard to have. But the faster you can adopt that mindset of, I don't need the business, and I want to serve these guys long term, provide value, provide education, don't drive them crazy, the easier it's going to be, right? The other one, always be adding value and insights. Remember I said challenge them to think differently about themselves? If you get them to go, you guys remember that CNC Music Factory song, things that make you go, right? That's what I'm looking for when I'm talking to somebody on the phone or in a meeting. They go, If you hear that noise, stay there. Because they're like, okay, so yeah, tell me more about that. Okay, what happened there? You go deeper into that conversation, because that's when they start to change their thinking, and that video will change in their mind. Disrupting patterns. What do we do? Right? Poke them in the butt. Okay? Connect customers to the emotions. Focus on questions instead of selling. Make your business process dependent, not people dependent. Okay? All of this stuff is not just building habits in your conversations, but in all your processes, your steps, your tools. Build stuff so that if you can automate things, do it. Right? So that you can then focus on the relationships, the conversations, because if you can be present, it's much better. I know how many times we go into a meeting, we're thinking about that meeting we just had and the one that we have to go into. and we have somebody right in front of us that we're not present with. And I want you guys to look out for that. How many times are you existing with somebody when you're in a state of non-presence? Right? That happens all the time. So we have to say, okay, whatever's happened before, whatever's going to happen, let's be in the moment with this person, and let's give a shit about the stuff they're telling us. Yeah? Can we agree? Everybody say, yeah, we're going to do that? Yeah, we're going to do that. I love it, baby. Okay? And be human, chaseable. Don't be weirdos. Okay? That's it. So this is how you can connect with me. One of the things that we are doing tomorrow, if you guys, anybody on Facebook, come join. Where's Curtis? Curtis is in the back there somewhere. Yeah, Curtis, we do a show every Friday. We just started back up, Whiskey Friday, where we sit around, we drink whiskey on Facebook Live, and we talk business. And anybody seen it before? It's fun, right? Come join us. We just talk business. We swear, drink whiskey. It's fantastic. And a lot of my corporate clients, they come watch it. They're like, this is way more normal than anything else we're doing. And actually, I had one client in the U.S. He introduced me, and when I get up on stage, everybody's like, oh, the sales guy. They didn't like it. And then he's like, and he's got this Whiskey Friday show where they drink. They're like, okay, we like this guy. Okay? So, anyways. The other thing, we do have a Sales Hero Academy. I threw this at you guys as well. If anybody wants to get some of the materials, all the corporate training we have, you can come up to me later or do this. But we've got some deals for you guys, 50% off all that. But that's what we're talking about, sales stuff, questions, giving a shit, everything. Anybody have any questions? Anything you want to add to that? We got, I think, 2 more minutes, 5 more minutes. I said all the things.
More info, Joe. Come on.
You want more? I can give you more. I got 3 more slides. I thought I'd run out of time. Questions? Thoughts? What's that? Throbbing. Yes. You guys throbbing with delight at this? It's good. Try it in your messaging. Thoughts?
Is it possible to get some of the slides if we need them?
I'll send them out to all you guys, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think we're recording a lot of this stuff, so we'll send you even like cool video. There's all sorts of things. Yeah. Throbbing with anticipation. Yes?
Yeah, Joe, just in terms of you working with financial planners and advisors, obviously you do work with them. Like, what kind of results have you seen?
The result that we get typically is in the first, so we do what's called a sales playbook, where I have about 120 different areas that we look at anybody's process and figure out where people are strong and weak in. Everybody's different, right? Instead of pre-prescribing. So the first thing we usually do is just kind of unweird a lot of that stuff. So we bring in those dialogues, we bring in the conversation, we say, hey, when I run into this kind of situation, we do segmenting of our customers. When I run into this situation with this type of customer discussing these types of things, this is what happens. How do we then affect that, right? And so we start to build that better mousetrap. We build the better processes around those. And the results usually right away, we kind of reduce a lot of the resistance for the person that's doing the selling, so that then they go, okay, this feels much better. Then they can start to speed up some of the conversations. We start to see, meetings go from 2 hours to then down to an hour. So we can do more volume. And then they're just more normal. The emails they send out, the text messaging, the voicemail, all the stuff they do is like, this is getting me better results. And usually we can see an increase quite quickly. Usually the first 90 days, yeah. Does that answer? Yeah. Yeah, cool. It's usually just unweirding most people. That's what I spend most of my time. You're being weird. Cool, let's not do that. That's my whole job.
I got another question.
Sure.
In terms of people that, like most people I find don't like networking, do you help people with just specifically networking?
Oh, for sure, yeah. We have actually 2 people in our network, Shigenori and Brenda, are coaches, and they're going to Japan next month in like 4 weeks. So I've been helping them with kind of building out their networking plan, setting up even some targets for how many. So one of the slides next is talking about selling in stages, not selling your product, but just selling a conversation. So in a networking event, what you're trying to do is build that 5-second, like, oh, you seem normal. Let's talk. Let's book a call. Let's book a conversation. Let's book a call. I don't know if I can help you. That was a big shift I made years ago. Rather than saying, do you know anybody that wants to buy my service? It was, do you know anybody that wants to talk about this, wants to talk about change, how life works, talk about their finance? I don't know if we can help them until we have that conversation. So networking, we do a lot of building around that and say, okay, go to this many events, do this many things, try and get this many conversations, and then we track the conversions as they go through the stages. Yeah. Anything else? Because networking is great, but if you don't have a plan, it feels like a lot of work, feels like a lot of stuff, right? And it can be way more fun. I like it.
All right.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Joe.
Cool, buddy.
Thanks for coming out, man.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
I'll be at the back.
That's awesome. Personal vouch for Joe. It's been great. I obviously know Joe personally, so I've been absorbing and working and dealing with Joe mannerisms and isms for the last 10 plus years. It's been incredible. I've taken little bits and I
you know, sometimes when you're close as a friend, you don't jump into the programming and all that kind of stuff as much. And so it's really good anytime I can sit here. Probably took 4 pages of notes again every single time.
Sorry, buddy.
We go through a presentation, and it's good to get that refresher, and it keeps you on point. You think about it. Probably the most real thing is being in the moment and present. That was a big shift. And you know, you say you have meetings a little bit more condensed, but I probably have more in my sales cycle and take longer time, but then have much deeper relationships. So thanks, Joe, for coming out. Really appreciate it. I hope it's valuable for everybody. And